OCO family, so I wanted to share something with y'all really fast. Y'all remember me telling y'all that the transatlantic slave trade was truly more of an intra-American slave trade than anything else. I've explained before that the first slaves and the most slaves in the so-called transatlantic slave trades were American Indians taken from our homelands to Europe, Africa, and other parts of the Americas, i.e., the islands in South America. And then you do know that the European powers were competing with each other to colonize these lands. And with doing so, you'll have different European countries um, trying to enslave the indigenous peoples, aka the American Indians, at different times. But we were always fighting them. It's never a time that we weren't, except for now. So we were enslaved as prisoners of war more than anything, but we were not subservient and docile people who accepted that as a way of life back then, like some others I will touch on briefly. Also remember, not all of us were slaves, but check this excerpt I stumbled across out. I'm here to connect the dots. Before we get into it, the only part that I disagree with is it saying that DeSoto encountered the Cherokee Nation in Florida. Now remind you that at one time Florida was named for the regions we know as Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana, according to the Spaniards who so-called explored these lands and tried to colonize it. But they didn't encounter the Cherokee Nation. It was a lot of other nations that was here, or tribes should I say, but more than likely they encountered people of the Yamasee Nation. Let's get into it. Quote, the first recorded European contact with the people of the Cherokee Nation was with the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto. When de Soto landed in Florida with his soldiers in 1539, he brought with him Spanish massives, chains, and iron collars for the acquisition of exportation of the Indian slaves. Hundreds of men, women, and children were captured by De Soto and transported to the coast for shipment to the Caribbean and to Spain. A Cherokee from Oklahoma remembered his father's tale of the Spanish slave trade. At an early state of the Spanish engaged in the slave trade on this continent, and in doing so kidnapped hundreds of thousands of Indian slaves from the Atlantic and Gulf Coast to work in their mines in the West Indies. Now I got two rhetorical questions, right? The first is, where are the so-called people that are named Native Americans today at in the Caribbean and in the West Indies? Then my next one would be, why don't these so-called Native Americans ever talk about their people being slaves or any other such? Actually, they brag about them so-called owning slaves, but when you do their genealogy, they can never find such, unlike me. But let's not get into that, because I might hurt some feelings. But yeah, where are they? They don't exist. Now, let's get into the next part that I shared content on before and talked about a little bit. Now, for those who don't know, there was another slave trade that happened in the so-called Americas that was called the Trans-Pacific slave trade that the Spaniards used. And you know who they imported? Take a look. Now, if you read the book, you'll see that these people were so-called like docile and subservient people. And if you know any real American Indian, we are not so. They were content with this, and then they got special privileges for being so, and then they were known to be able to learn languages fast and to adapt and try to infiltrate themselves into other cultures, and they got special privileges for doing so. And as the last dot connected, another thing is that the Atlantic Ocean is known as the aggressive ocean that modern day ships still have a tough time getting through. And the Pacific Ocean means peaceful. It's known as the peaceful ocean. So how much easier would it to be, to transport any goods, whether it be, people or other things. Stay tuned, family. Peace, love, and power. Till next time. Okay, so the short clip I'm about to show is from a racist movie called Goodbye Uncle Tom. Now, even in those movies, they drop a little bit of jewels, so check me out.
What are they doing here? They're Indians.
Ah, this is one of my many unsuccessful experiments. You see, with Indians, there's absolutely nothing to be done. There's the same difference between a Negro and an Indian as there is between a dog and a coyote. You can put a dog on a leash, beat him, and he'll always be there to lick your feet. Take away a coyote's liberty, and you've cut off his hair. An Indian will never be a slave. No one has ever been able to make them reproduce in captivity. They do not eat, they do not talk, they do not sleep, they do not make love.